All right. Well, good evening. Hopefully, you can all hear me, see me. Thanks for so much for joining us today to learn about the University of Medicine and Health Sciences, or UMHS. My name's Sean Powers. I'm Vice President for Admissions at UMHS, and my colleagues and I appreciate the opportunity to share information about the university with you. I'd like to begin by noting that if you've not applied for admission yet to UMHS, applications are still being accepted and processed for this fall. That's September of 2026. So just 7 weeks from now, you could be experiencing what you have been working toward for so long, and that's day one of medical school. In other words, if your plan was to start med school this fall, but you've not yet been given the opportunity and you're currently considering what your options are, how you may spend the next year as you go through the process again, um, you may not need to do all that. Talk to us. We may still be able to provide an opportunity for you. We're processing applications not only for this fall, but for the entry terms in 2027 as well. Now, we run these monthly webinars to present the UMHS program in detail. We always have great questions from our audience. So as we move along this evening, feel free to type your questions into the Q&A area. We'll answer each of them individually, and we'll ask our panelists their perspective on a few of them as well. Helping out behind the scenes and handling many of those individual questions and answers is my colleague, that's Sham Daria. He's the Director of Enrollment Management. And along with him, I'm pleased to introduce our panelists for this evening. First up is our Assistant Dean of Student Affairs, who's also Associate Professor of Molecular Sciences, also the Chair of the Research Program. It's Dr. Craig Eyre. Good evening, Craig. Good to see you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Sean. Thank you for joining us and taking part of your night to be here with us. So, I am happy to talk to you about, what life is like on the island, about our academics, and about how we move through the basic sciences into the clinical program, and hopefully you get to start envisioning yourself what it's like to actually be in a medical program. So, a little bit about myself. I'm Canadian. I'm from Newfoundland. I did my PhD at Memorial University of Newfoundland, and I have been a professor or an instructor in higher education for 18 years now. And in that time, I will tell you that it's been my privilege to be with UMHS because of the focus that we have on a quality and personalized medical education experience. So I'm really enthusiastic that you're here, and thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Craig. Thanks for taking some time out of your evening to share your thoughts with our audience. Also with us this evening is our Director of Learning Services, is Dr. Donna Walker. Hi, Dr. Walker.
Hi, welcome everyone. Have a good evening. I oversee a lot of the support that we have on campus that gets you through the medical program, so from the beginning to the very end. And I'm excited to talk to you about what that looks like. I have a lot of experience in higher ed, about a decade in medical education, and I get to meet with students in one-on-one appointments. So I know a lot of what the individual experience of medical school feels like. So we'll share some of that today and talk you through how the experience goes and what it can feel like when you actually have support to help you succeed.
That's excellent. And thanks, Dr. Walker. One of the hallmarks, as you'll learn about the UMHS program, or maybe one of the reasons that you came here tonight to learn more about UMHS, is because you've heard about the outstanding individualized attention and student support. And Dr. Walker will certainly share her role, her and her department's role in making that happen. So good to see you, Donna. Thanks a lot. Now, to tie everything together and to talk about how the education at UMHS leads to success in your career, we have one of our favorite alumni, and it's Dr. Zach Vanderveer. Dr. Vanderveer is PGY3 in interventional radiology at Corewell Health in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Good evening, Zach, and I know that you're giving us some very valuable time. So thanks so much on behalf of our audience for sharing some of your thoughts about your UMHS experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sean. Good evening, guys and gals. UMHS is a great place. I am so blessed that I found UMHS and was able to complete my dream of going to medical school. And now I'm living the dream in interventional radiology residency. I can't wait to tell you more about UMHS, the friends I've made, the opportunities I've had. And just how great the medical school is.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being here. And thanks again to those of you in our audience. I mean, you're all certainly aware that there are more than a few decent options out there when you're considering an international medical school. So our aim during this session is to provide an understanding for you why we feel UMHS is worthy of your consideration in comparison. So once again, I invite you to type your questions into the Q&A area as we go. We want to know what's on your mind. Zach, let's really, I think, let's begin with you. I think it makes sense, really, to begin with you. You began your education at UMHS as a brand new medical student a number of years ago now. So when you think back to when you were in the position of the folks in our audience, they're in the position now that you were then. So what was it that first attracted you to UMHS?
So I guess I I was a unique medical student applicant. I was a collegiate athlete, captain of a college soccer team. I had good grades. I think my MCAT was 500. My grades, I was like a 3.9. I had all the letters of rec. I kind of had everything that I thought I needed to get into medical school in the States. And I applied broadly. I only wanted to apply once, and I applied to like probably 70 medical schools, with UMHS being the 70th. Um, I had several interviews, probably 7 interviews out of those 70, which is pretty incredible just with how competitive medical school is. But to only get about 10%, I was pretty surprised by that, especially with my grades and MCAT scores. Um, got waitlisted at 5 of the places, and thought I was a pretty good interviewer. I was a chemist at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals at the time, was doing well in a professional setting, and it just wasn't panning out for me. And luckily, one of my best friends from undergrad, my biochemistry partner, Addie Loftus, was at the UMHS Medical School, currently going through her first semester, and she told me to check the place out. It was great that I had somebody already there, because I think in your guys' shoes, and especially in mine back then, I was always like, is this real? Am I going to get down there and I'm not going to be able to come back to the US and do clinical rotations? So there was a lot of doubts in my mind, and especially even my parents' minds. I applied to UMHS after hearing about it and all the good things from my friend. And within, I think, 3 days, I had a response back to my application that I was accepted to the med program, which we'll learn tonight. There's a few different programs at UMHS. There's an ARP program. There's a EBS, which is Extended Basic Science. And then there's a med program, which I was accepted into the med program. And I had an in-person interview that went great. And after that, I really didn't want to go anywhere else. Depending on my wait lists and things like that, I was really hard set on UMHS. They treated me like family. They treated me like a person. They looked at my academic profile and my application in a whole scale view, and I had a great experience through the interview process. I accepted the med position. I then went to UMHS in September back in 2018, and I was able to move through UMHS semester after semester with a ton of help from the faculty. They, like Dr. Craig Ayre said, it is one of the most unique places that I've ever been. Not only St. Kitts, but just the medical school caring so much about the students and really putting you in a position of success and for success. All of the academic faculty there. There's no research requirements like you see in the U.S. for them to be putting out a bunch of papers or really devoting their time to their research and not to the students. Everyone is there to teach you, and everyone wants to see you succeed. And I think that's one of the things that not only separates UMHS as a Caribbean school amongst other Caribbean schools, but also UMHS as a medical school to medical schools across the nation.
I mean, you just described a situation that happened to you, what was that, 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that, probably, right?
Yeah, so I'm for yeah, it would have been almost 7 years ago. Yeah.
So I mean the point being that that's something that was happening 15, 20 years ago as well, and it's still happening today. So the people in our audience are running into really the same issue. So you're applying to all of these different schools around the US, you're interviewing. You were fortunate to find yourself on some wait lists and have that sort of that you were that close, to an opportunity. What you were really fortunate about, though, was that you knew somebody already at UMHS who talked to you about an alternate option. So many people in our audience now have your experience really to sort of lean on, because if you don't have that and you're running into what so many people in the US run into every year. There are about 30,000 people that are denied from every single medical school to which they apply, right? So there are over 50,000 people that are applying in the US. There are only about 22,000 seats at the medical schools in the US. We have it on the screen now. So, if you're getting in, you're taking one of those seats, obviously. And there's about 30,000 people each year that are told no, thank you. And a lot of them are clearly people, like Zach, who with outstanding undergraduate records, who have a great resume, who interview well, who are doing things for the right reason, who have a great resume. They've prepared themselves in all of the other ways for medical school that you have to do. You have to, get some experience. You have to kind of dip your toe in the water and try out some of the things that you'll be doing through various experiential learning opportunities. And yet there just aren't enough seats for all the people that we need in this country to become physicians. And it's even worse in Canada because there are fewer medical schools, and so the disparity between the number of people who are getting in and the number of applicants is even wider. So luckily for you, Craig, you were able to find your way right into UMHS at that time. And unfortunately, too many people don't know about that, and so don't know about this as an alternate option. And something else that you said that was interesting is that you found out in pretty short order. Our decision was made in fairly short order after the interview happened, and that's what happens here. This is not a 14-month process like you go through at U.S. medical schools. After you interview, we make decisions on a rolling basis, and so that can be off-putting when you first hear it. Say, wait a minute, why does it take 14 months to go from applying to enrolling at a U.S. school, and I can go in a matter of a couple of weeks from applying to having an admissions decision at UMHS? How is that possible? It's simply because the admissions committee makes decisions on a weekly basis, and we transmit them on a weekly basis as well. So all of that really to say that, obviously you didn't have to waste any time. What I think members of our audience are probably weighing, and I know this from my, now over 20 years of experience working with pre-med students, when you are on a wait list somewhere or you've been denied from the places to which you've applied and you're not really getting any great feedback as to why, often what happens is you want to go for a post-baccalaureate program, or you want to go for a master's degree, and that year-long post-bac or that 2-year master's degree, the intention is to improve your profile and then go back and reapply again. And what we see all too often is that there's a whole new crop of people that are entering the process again the following year. Now you're up against them as well, and it can be quite a lot to overcome. So very fortunate for those in our audience that they're hearing about this as an alternate option, as a realistic option. So, Zach, obviously, once you got in, then you went through the basic sciences. You've graduated, you've moved on to residency in a very competitive residency program in the US. You've gone through all these different phases. I think it's natural then to compare yourself to others who you rotated with as a third and fourth year medical student, who, by the way, at UMHS, you rotate at US or teaching hospitals. So you're in the same hospitals that U.S. medical students are in, and you're doing the same exact work as the people who got an opportunity, whereas you didn't. So you're right back in there. Then when you graduate, I mean, obviously you go through the same residency programs as well. So I think the obvious question, and one that we typically get into in these types of formats, is how well prepared did you feel when you compared yourself to them? You were literally side by side with them doing the same work. And then, knowing they were coming from medical schools all over the US. And at the same time, not only how did you look at the situation, but, how did your faculty members? How did the people you were working for, view that, the difference, or was there a difference between you and those you were working with?
Yeah, so like Sean said, once you finish your time on St. Kitts, then you go to a main semester, which is our clinical semester. I think this semester alone is what really not evens the playing field, but puts us way above other U.S. medical schools and other Caribbean schools. And what this semester is you are taking standardized patients, so patients and, or excuse me, people acting like patients, portraying scenarios that you're getting lab work from, not real lab work, but you're getting papers that sort of show different lab work, or getting radiology scans that showed different pathology, and you're interpreting them, excuse me, and then furthermore helping make clinical decision making for this patient. And you do this for a full semester for 4 months while you're studying for your step one boards. What this does is it just puts such a confidence in you with your physical exam findings, with your clinical decision making, and it's not done really anywhere else in the Caribbean or in the United States, to sort of put us at that clinical tier. And then after that semester is done, you take step one, and then you're going into your clinical rotations. Like Sean said, your clinical rotations are in the US, Canada, or Puerto Rico. We have 20 plus affiliated sites that you can go to where you will do your core rotations, where you can also do elective rotations, and we'll get into that later. And you're right alongside medical students from University of Michigan, from Michigan State University, from Nova Southeastern, from Florida. I was alongside some medical students from Harvard and Johns Hopkins. And when I tell you that there was no difference in my knowledge to theirs, and that actually I would say on multiple occasions I was knowing more physical exam findings, or being able to articulate what physical exam findings I had or what I wanted to do next clinically, was above them because of this fifth semester in Maine, and also just my total learning at UMHS. Um, and I know you guys have probably heard this, but medical school is taught the same. The human body doesn't change from one medical school to the other. Everything is taught the same. I would say one thing that also separates UMHS from any other U.S. school, and definitely a lot of Caribbean schools, is that we actually still have cadavers for anatomy, and you're dissecting and you're in the cadaver lab. We have a 6-to-1 cadaver ratio, which is also unheard of. Many times you're trying to get 20 people around one body, and you're trying to see, the superior mesenteric artery, and it's small, and not everybody can see this. So I think encompassing, once again, UMHS just does such a great job of being there for the student, and they really have the system figured out as to what, if you put in the work, how much you will be able to separate yourself from the pack. And that's what it is to get a residency, separating yourself from the pack. And, whether you want orthopedic surgery, whether you want anesthesiology, whether you want diagnostic radiology, interventional radiology, whether you want ophthalmology, we have matched people in all of those, which also as a Caribbean school is quite remarkable. So just sort of wrapping back around from what Sean was saying, you and the training that you get at UMHS is going to be different really than anywhere else, in the sense of they have found certain niches with your fifth semester in Maine, with your starting you in clinicals while you're on the island, things like that just sort of separate you from the pack when you get into your clinical rotations, to where you don't necessarily feel like you're different than anybody else, and you're not. You have the same knowledge, but you, I think, have a step above when it comes to your clinical knowledge and your physical exam skills, just because of how this fifth semester in Maine works, and how well UMHS prepares you for clinicals as well as your boards.
Thanks, Zach. I mean, that's a great overview from your perspective as an alum, as a former student, and certainly to where you are now in residency in third year as an interventional radiologist. So, um, I guess you've just finished you finished your third year, right? Do we have that right?
Yep. So I just finished my third year, June 30th. And so I'm starting my fourth year. So I'm officially halfway done of 6 years. So another 3 years to go. It's a long residency, but it's fun. We do a lot of very cool stuff. And like you said, yeah, very competitive residency. I am over the moon and blessed that I matched in this competitive residency. But that's also, once again, just a testament to UMHS and how much, if you put in the work, you can really make whatever dreams you have possible.
Well, my apologies for introducing you as a PGY3. You've
You
completely
probably It
completed
just changed, so you're good.
that. Shame on me for forgetting it was July. All right. Well, thanks, Craig. Zach, that's a great cross section. Don't go too far. But for now, let me turn to Dr. Ayer. Obviously, Dr. Ayer, Zach touched a little bit on the faculty student interaction at UMHS, which I certainly know is by design, through our smaller classes, our smaller class sizes, the emphasis on personal and individualized attention. So, can you talk about the educational experience then from your perspective? As you mentioned in your introduction, you're both an educator by trade, not just a scientist, and also an administrator. And in doing
Yeah.
so, give a bit of a curricular overview as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to. I'm actually going to start out. There was a question that we got in the Q&A about how people can start to prepare themselves, if they're interested in coming down and what they would do for the Caribbean. So I would tell you kind of the same idea no matter where you wanted to go to medical school. So, like Zach said, he had to apply broadly, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to put your name out there in a lot of places in the US or Canada with any expectation of success. So, nobody really knows where they're going to go or what it's going to be like. So, obviously, you do your due diligence and you put your name in places where you think you're going to do well. And so that comes into looking at the environment, looking at if you're going to another country, what is the country like? What are the customs like? Is this a place where, I think I'm going to do well? And that's part of the consideration no matter where you want to go. And I understand I come from this from a slightly different perspective. Ever since I graduated from my undergraduate the first time, even before that, I've kind of been hopping from country to country. And I think the experience is extremely rewarding because it takes you out of what you already know and lets you build something new for yourself. And that change in perspective can be absolutely vital in helping you to develop into the person that you want to become. Now, the most important thing for doing that well, especially when you're talking about an educational program, is to put yourself in an environment where the education is going to work for you. And so, to kind of dovetail into Sean's comments, as a faculty member at UMHS, so I've taught in a number of different schools, I've been in different places. Here's what I can tell you is different about UMHS, and Zach said it the best. The human body is the human body. Medicine is medicine. It's not a question about what you're going to learn. And it doesn't matter what medical school you go to, it doesn't matter what country you're in where you do it. Medicine is medicine. Biology is biology. And so the actual question is, how is this going to be structured to support me? And what am I going to be able to do, if I run into difficulties? So I'll start with the faculty, because that's kind of your touch point. Our student to faculty ratio is about 7 to 1, which is comparable to US medical schools. And that's really, really important because it means that you don't become an anonymous face in the crowd. You don't just become your student number. And I will be the first to tell you that there are other schools that you can apply to in the US or the Caribbean where your entry class is 1,000 individuals or your entry class is 500 individuals. And not only do you not know your professor, you don't know your classmates. It's a sea of people. And then at the end of that year, you kind of hope that half those people are still there. And that's a completely different model from the way that UMHS works. So that 7-to-1 faculty ratio is vital for what we do because it means that as faculty members, I get to know my students. So right now, I have a class of 38 individuals. I'm not on the island right now. I'm in Canada, actually, right at this moment, working with some of our hospital partners. But all of this week, and all of last week, I've been on Zoom with my class. So I just transitioned out from one place to the other with them. I've been holding my office hours. They've been texting me through WhatsApp. Um, I've done a little bit of tutorial class work since I've been here. And the reason that I can do that and make it successful is because I know them and because they feel confident in reaching out to me because I've been with them the whole time. So about 100% of the faculty time is dedicated to teaching and teaching related activities. So that means either in the classroom, in one-on-one mentoring, in individual or group counseling, in student advising, in academic meetings, in review meetings. So all of that is the focus of a faculty member's time at UMHS. And here's the big difference. If you look at one of the schools in the US, you look at one of the schools in Canada, they tend to operate on what's known as the 50-30-20 model. And so 50% of the time is supposed to be teaching, 30% of the time is research, and 20% of the time is service back to the university. And that 50% of teaching time, on average, it adds up to be about 60 to 90 hours per year for a faculty member. That's it. 60 to 90 hours per year. I teach about 90 hours per semester. And so that means a faculty member at UMHS spends about 3 times as much time with their students as a faculty member in Canada or in the United States. And so that means you get a lot less of a classroom experience and a lot more of a mentorship experience. And I think that's actually vital for success. Medicine is not an academic discipline. And that's probably the most important thing that I could say to you tonight. Medicine is not academic. Medicine is a trade. Medicine is a vocation. It's something that you do. It's not something that you know. So you can have all of the knowledge, but that doesn't actually mean that you can practice. So medicine is all about what you can do with what you know. And the way to do that, the way that any good mentorship works, is by putting people in place who can demonstrate for you the skills that you need to have acquired, who can model for you the behaviors and the life that you're going into, and can help to guide you to become those things. That's way beyond academics. That has nothing to do with the curriculum, and it has everything to do with shaping you into a physician. If you don't spend any time with those people, how is that supposed to happen? And you're just supposed to go out there in the world in your clinical years and your rotations and your residency and hope it all comes together for you. And I think this is why our students leave the basic sciences with such a competitive advantage going into their clinical years and into their residencies, is because they've been modeled into that clinician right from the first day that we are there. And so that's a combination of class sizes, academic supports. And so, for example, every semester we have 3 block exams. Those are your big exams. So we do once a month. We have 3 quizzes that are our mini exams. And so your grades are distributed where we can intervene immediately if we start seeing that things aren't going well, or we can provide advice to you. Like this week, I started teaching somebody how to sketch for their pathways because they're a more visual learner. And so even though I'm remote, I've got, virtual pen, touchscreen laptop. So I start saying, here's how I organize my thoughts when I need to start making these connections. And they start seeing how the layers come together. So that's not teaching. That has nothing to do with curriculum. that has everything to do with helping somebody to develop their own concepts about what we are doing together. And intimately tied with that is what Donna does through the Teaching and Learning Center. And so we have this hand in glove relationship with our teaching and learning support system where students get not just the academic support, but also um, I would say, the lifestyle support for how to be a successful med student.
Well, since you mentioned Dr. Walker, Craig, let's move to Donna, and obviously Donna, one of the threads that's running through all of this, and really through the entire experience, as Zach talked about, is the support provided by our faculty. Dr. Ayer just teed that up, and Dr. Walker, that's your specialty. So, can you share with the audience some information about your area and why we're known for being such a caring and supportive academic community?
Absolutely. So I think everybody on this call, as you're thinking about applying to med school or transferring into a med school, you've heard a lot of stories about the volume, the pace, the difficulty, the idea that you are drinking from a fire hose. And I will say, not to intimidate you, but a lot of that is true, right? A lot of studying medicine involves being ready to go from day one and really being able to keep up with a fast pace. And the reality is, coming from undergrad or even graduate school, a lot of people don't have specifically the learning skills that they need to succeed in medical school. And we recognize that. And because we recognize that, there's a team of people to support you to develop those skills. So coming into our med program, our EBS program, or even in our 1 semester prep program, we usually have you take a learning and study skills inventory. So, right off the bat, you have a profile of your strengths and weaknesses or gaps as a learner. So, let's say you're really good at time management, but you struggle a little bit with test taking strategies. We give you that assessment in the first week, and we use that to kind of guide how we support you throughout. So, you having that assessment, you have that profile, you can come in on day one and say, let's talk about this. I've always struggled with this particular thing, or I can't quite figure out my test anxiety, and we work you through that. We also have a range of workshops that we do throughout the semester that are group-based sessions, so you can learn from each other and learn from us on what are some best practices, right? Those lifestyle things that help you process information a little bit better, help you understand the material a little bit better, and ultimately help you score well when we know time and energy is limited. And so additionally, we also have a study skills class. And so that's specifically in our 1 semester prep program. But in that class, we take that assessment and we build in small groups throughout the term on about 10 different domains. So we test and we build skills for keeping the motivation high when you're tired, it's the end of the term or it's the middle of the term, or just when things aren't going to plan, keeping your concentration and focus when it's been a long day and you've had classes and you have to go study your test taking skills, and that's a big one. Medical school tests at a really high level. And a lot of people come in and say, I've never been a great test taker. There are all these multiple choice exams. And we know that that's something we can help you develop. So we work on that with you as well to help you understand how to read a question, how to interpret a question, how to learn from a question so that you understand how to perform well on your exams. And so we go through this range of skills in that class. And what we see is most students at the end of that class, we test again for these study skills. And most people see significant leaps and jumps in their study skills. And we can say the same about the students who work with us in our one-on-one appointments. So what you would do is when you get to UMHS, you would actually be able to just book an appointment with us whenever you need to. So we have some students who come in at the start of the term and who regularly maybe check in every 2 weeks, which is a really great thing because of the small population of students. We're able to really build a rapport with you and help you figure out what you need to work on in a given, let's say, week for a given quiz, for a given block of exams. And I don't think that's something many of the other schools have. A lot of schools don't even have medical education learning specialists, but even the schools that do have it, the ratio of student support just isn't there. So I can tell you, most of the students we work with give us regular updates, come for support, get support, even just check in, say things are going well, like we're on track, and we can talk about studying for cumulative exams. And we really see that not only are students incredibly satisfied, but they really report that it makes a difference in their exam scores. A lot of students experience significant jumps when they start working with us. So that's one of the things that we really advocate for, just coming in, having a meeting. We can do it on Zoom, we can do it in the office, and we can provide you with the support you need so you don't feel like you're alone. You're hearing from 100 different people what you should do. You're watching influencers online tell you, like, this is how you study, this is how you pass. And you can actually have someone who has, decades of experience working with you, helping you figure out what works for you, even if it might not be what works for the person next to you. And that's a big piece as well, right? Because everyone will offer you advice. And sometimes you don't have time to try out every single thing to find what works for you. So that's the sum of what we do. But outside of that, there is a lot of support in terms of the campus counselors that we have who can actually meet with you and help you with the transition to medical school. And that's a general lifestyle transition, right? You're in a different country. For a lot of people, you're away from home or your family for the first time. You're navigating that. I always tell people that no matter what, even when you're in med school, life still happens. And having that support from many people is just a good place to stop, check in, and just see if everything's on track and can help you with also some of the basics, right? We all know we're supposed to get a good night's sleep or a full night's sleep, but we've also all tried getting a full night's sleep before an exam when we're a little bit too stressed to fall asleep. So there's all these additional support services that can really help you just to be your best and not to feel like you're just surviving in medical school, but you're thriving. You're that student who is involved in social activities, you're going to events, you're involved in social clubs, you're making a difference on campus, and you're also doing well in your degree program. And we believe that's possible for everybody. And that's why we show up and we try to help you kind of achieve that success. So that's an overall summary of what you can expect with the type of support and time and dedication that we put in to everyone who wants it in order to do well.
That was a great overview, Don. Thank you. And you touched on something there that made me think. And while our university has been around now for nearly 20 years, and we've graduated 16, 1,700 folks who are out practicing all around the U.S., Canada, Puerto Rico. Um, Folks don't just land here. And you mentioned something, Dr. Walker, in your comments a moment ago that people have decades of experience doing this, and it not only goes for you and you've worked elsewhere previously, larger institutions helping students navigate medical programs. It goes for the faculty members as well. They didn't just land here. They didn't just grow at UMHS, and these are folks who have taught elsewhere in U.S. or Canadian medical schools, have a lot of experience, and it's been mentioned a couple of times actually. Zach mentioned it, and Craig mentioned it as well. There's not a research requirement to remain on the faculty here. And in so many other places, you have that publish or perish mentality, and the focus then for an individual to essentially keep their job and keep the dollars flowing into the university is they have to keep producing research. And that isn't happening here. So I just want to underscore that once again. And that all helps support what Dr. Walker is talking about, the individualized attention that you're getting when you're actually getting that from your faculty members and they know who you are, as Dr. Ayer described in his comments. That really means something, and it's going to help the information stick. And when you know you have multiple people to go to ask for assistance, and it's a much more comforting feeling walking into an office and the person sitting behind that desk already knows your first name because they've gotten to build a rapport with you, build a relationship with you, have been able to sit down with you, hear about all of these things. All of these things that we're talking about in sum total, the individualized attention, the smaller class sizes, the student support from both, specialized, folks in Dr. Walker's department, learning specialists, and from the faculty members themselves. All of this leads to a 96% retention number for us. We have a 4% attrition, conversely. And I would encourage you, if you're looking at any international medical school, in particular those across the Caribbean, you know, when you're talking to the representatives at these institutions, well, first of all, before you're talking to anybody, scour their websites, look for either an attrition number or conversely a retention number, and you will not find one because there is, and I've worked other places myself, and I can tell you from, again, my decades of experience, UMHS is the only school I've ever known that is willing to put their retention rate and, again, conversely, their attrition rate in writing. And that's really important And it's because every other school that isn't saying that doesn't want you to know what it is. And our students, by and large, are doing extremely well and they're successful and they're moving through the program. And where are they moving through the program? We've talked about it a couple of times. We've talked around it a little bit. So, Sean, maybe we can put up, let's go to slide 27 and then maybe back to 26 and then we'll go back to 28 again. Dr. Ayer, when we take a look here at these photos from the academic buildings on our campus in St. Kitts. Looking at the interior of a building, we know it's in St. Kitts, but I don't really think that if we were to show people who didn't know anything about medical schools these photos, they wouldn't know it wasn't in North America. So can you describe maybe for the audience what's going on in the various photos here, and then we'll show some of the other shots from campus as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, you are 100% correct. So I've taught in the Middle East, I've taught in St. Kitts, I've taught in Canada, I've been in research facilities all over the world. And what I would tell you is that the campus at UMHS is exceptionally well equipped for studying and teaching medicine. And I think part of the reason why it does so well is because we're dedicated to just doing a single thing and doing it well. If you think about all these other universities, medical schools tend to be in larger facilities where all of the different faculties are competing for resources and competing for space on campus. And that doesn't exist for us. So we're 100% dedicated to that. So what you're seeing in these pictures, starting at the upper left, you've got our main auditorium. So that seats somewhere about 150 if it was at capacity, but our class sizes are quite a bit smaller than that. But as you can see in that facility, we've got our projectors, we've got our televisions hung from the ceiling, we've got power in all the desks. So that's everywhere around campus. We've got the campus Wi-Fi that's there. And so that makes it a very integrated teaching and learning space. So what we like to do, and all of our classrooms are set up that way. It's just depending on the number of people who are there. If you see right below that picture, that is our Western lab. That's where I do most of my teaching. We have a duplicate of that lab on the other side of the building called the Eastern lab because we're very creative with names on that one. We just created a new classroom that I'm calling the Southern lab, but it hasn't caught on yet. At any rate, all of our facilities, no matter where you are on campus, are going to provide you, an equal quality of access to the resources. And what that means is that we can use our space very flexibly. And so we can move seamlessly from a didactic lecture to a practical component because we have that kind of desk space where we do interactive teaching with our projectors because they're all touchscreen, they're all set up with pens. So we'll create interactive sessions that way. We have our Turning Point software, which allows us to do interactive formative assessment in those classrooms. And so what we've got is very flexible space that allows us to move seamlessly through different medical disciplines. And because our classroom sizes are quite large, but the number of students that we have in any one class is, let's say, like I've got 38 in mine right now, all the way up to our largest class has been about 100 individuals, means everybody gets equal access to that kind of technology and those kinds of resources. In the upper right hand, you're seeing one of our smaller upstairs classrooms. This is the one where we do our ARP program, so our Accelerated Review Program. This is for students who enter into the university who may need a little bit of a bridge program before they get into the pace of the medical university. And so it allows people to either bring up some things in their academic history that may need a little bit more support, or people who need a little bit of extra time to develop study skills or time management skills. So that ARP classroom is a dedicated space for those students. And then in the bottom right, we have our laboratory space. So we are equipped between the Western and the Eastern lab with a flexible laboratory space that we are currently in the process of bringing back into use. So during COVID, obviously, it's very, very difficult for people to work in hands-on laboratory spaces. And right now, what we're doing is beginning to bring this back online for a pathology research project that is looking at some different tissue structures that we can see because we work with cadavers in our anatomy department. Those two faculties can collaborate to look at unusual structures that you can see in actual human bodies. And so this brings almost like a full circle teaching space where our anatomy students who are in the first semester and our pathology students who are in our last semester can work on a joint project and looking at things that they can publish. But the publishing is not the goal of this. Supporting the teaching and learning of those two different cohorts is the goal, and sort of the publication is a spin-off benefit for them.
Yeah, excellent. So, I think what I was thinking too was that obviously we want to give folks a look into what's going on in St. Kitts. So obviously we've got a little bit of a look here at the campus. Sean, maybe we can roll through some of the other slides showing the campus just to show you've got the virtual hospital here. Craig, you want to talk a little bit about what they're doing in this photo?
Yeah, so something very unique for UMHS is we maintain a 28-bed virtual hospital upstairs in our facility. So right here, these would be students who are in their last semester. They're in the course Introduction to Clinical Medicine, and they're using, so you might be able to see in the bed, it looks kind of like a mannequin. That's actually a Harvey simulator. So a Harvey simulator allows us to do advanced cardiac work with our students. So Harvey can simulate a number of different heart events and provide EKG readings that match those types of events. So it allows us to do a practical training with those students before they ever start doing rotations in the hospital. We have a pediatric wing in this hospital, so we do a full semester of time in this teaching and learning facility where it's basically a transition from in class to a more practical hands-on. We also use this space for some of our workshops. So we can use it for our suturing clinic that we do. We have an ultrasound clinic that we do. We have a casting clinic that we do during the semester. So this space is used for all of those. And in the first semester, we have what we call our physical diagnosis class. So PD is where you start learning how to take patient histories, start interacting with patients, do some vital monitoring like blood pressure, glucose, heart rate, or body temperature. So we'll do all of that in this facility.
And then and I know we talked about it when in Zach's opening comments, Sean, but let's show let's show the anatomy lab. Yeah. Craig, what jumps out at you here?
So I think some of the most important things about the anatomy lab are first and foremost, the way that this is set up is almost like a surgery suite. So above each of these tables, you've got a bona fide surgery style lamp. And so the benefit of working with those actually, in case you don't know why they got those weird lamps in surgery, they don't cast shadows. So because the lights are on different angles, you always get a good view of what you're working on. If you notice here, we've got between 4 and 5 students who are at each station. And what we can have here is also a camera that's suspended at each of these positions so that we can show what we're working on while we're working on them. And we can also show from different monitors and different stations. So we can set up different cadavers or different what we call pro sections. It means they've already been dissected for the students and they're looking at specific things. We can show them class wide while we get people rotating through on these different stations.
Excellent. So that's a little bit of a look into some of the academic facilities and what you're moving through. And you've heard a lot of talk, obviously, about how you're going through. Now you're able to, visualize, well, really what the campus looks like. Now, all three of you, of our panelists, Dr. Vanderveer, Dr. Walker, Dr. Air, all of you had to move to St. Kitts at some point, obviously. None of you are native Kittitian. So any of the new students who are coming in, any of our prospective students, are going to need to do that as well. And we've had a question or two, sort of surrounding this, but we'll get right to it, I guess. And Sean, we kind of go through some of the slides that we have showing what it's like living in St. Kitts. But um, Zach, you came down from the Midwest. What was it like for you moving to St. Kitts, and what stands out to you about living there during the basic sciences in St. Kitts?
Yeah, so I came from the Midwest. I came from a small town, Elk Rapids, Michigan. I graduated high school with like 50 people. My undergrad was Alma College, like I said. That was like smaller than a lot of high schools in the US. So I never really had a big environment, never really had, I don't know, like a big culture shock or anything like that. And so moving to St. Kitts was incredible for me. It was, I think everybody in life at some point, you just got to take a big jump. And you just got to go for, whatever you think you want to do. Why not go and try it? And I think, med school and UMHS was a big jump for me. A lot of my family, was pretty skeptical of me moving down there, of medical school in general. So one thing that was absolutely great about doing medical school in St. Kitts for me was sort of the solitude of it. I'm a big family person. I have a lot of family in Michigan, a lot of family asking me to do things. And so me being able to go down there for, 16 weeks at a time and then fly back for a week, go for another 16 weeks at a time was great for me and great for my studying and great for just my all around um, fundamentals of medical school and knowledge. Furthermore, living wise, very streamlined process when I was looking to find places to live. There's a database that UMHS has that I would assume they probably still have. I had friends live in Camps, which is kind of a town that's right next to the university. You can walk
Not
from,
actual camps. That doesn't
yeah,
sound too
Yeah,
good.
no.
The town's name is Camps, just so you know.
yeah. So buildings, livable dwellings that are very nice, that you are able, and I think since I've been on the island, or maybe right when I was leaving the island, they have built a bridge now that goes over kind of like this ravine that is a goat farm. That's kind of cool. That's pretty close to campus. That allows you to kind of walk without getting close to the road or anything like that to UMHS and to the university on site. Furthermore, with the housing database and everyone being able to help you with housing, it was great because they kind of gave you a bunch of options and a bunch of diversity that what do you want, what are you concerned about, or what are some amenities that you would like. So I am a gym rat. I need to go to the gym, whether it's treadmill, whether it's running, whether it's weightlifting. But that's sort of my escape, and especially with all the studying you're doing on the island, that was one thing that was important to me. Is I wanted to find like a gym that had like 24-hour access, and I also didn't want to buy a car. Because people do buy cars, but UMHS provides transportation, bus transportation, so I didn't feel like I needed a car. So I wanted to find a place that was walkable for groceries. So I lived in Frigate Bay, which is more of like a touristy area. And I lived at one of the apartment complexes slash hotels called the Royal St. Kitts. Reason I did that was a grocery store was like a 200-yard walk. They had 24-hour gym access, so I could go to the gym whenever I wanted. And they also had a little bit of security. Not that St. Kitts is a bad place, but anywhere you go, there are certain times where things happen. And me going to an island that I had never been, I kind of wanted that up front. And if I felt like I was safe, which I did, you could very well move to other areas. There's also like a Marriott hotel that you can sort of stay at. There's also multiple different apartment complexes that you can stay at. There's also Ross Veterinary Hospital or veterinary school that's there. So there's a bunch of student environment that is throughout the island. So that was
Yeah,
the choice.
we'll stay with that, Zach, just for a minute. Sean, let's go to 47 because then we can kind of show what Zach is
Oh yeah, this is
describing
great.
there. So what you're looking at, you can't see it. It's kind of in the middle. If you squint, you'll see there's like a gold circle there in the middle. That's actually where UMHS, the campus is. And then you see there's a number of housing locations clustered near the campus, and then sort of off to the right, it almost looks like a chicken wing, a chicken leg, I'm sorry. And sort of off to the right there is the Frigate Bay area, which Zach mentioned is a much more tourist focused area. A lot of expatriates moving down from Canada, from the US, moving there in retirement as well. That's where the Marriott is. So there's a lot of tourist amenities that are there. So those are your two main areas. You've sort of got the area near the campus, you've got the area a little further away. And Zach said this, and so I want to underscore it. The UMHS provides transportation all around. So, taxis are plentiful and inexpensive, but you won't need to take one all the time because UMHS is providing shuttle service through all of the neighborhoods. We know where everybody is living, and that's the other value of having that database that Zach made note of. Before you're coming down, once you decide you're coming to UMHS, you'll be working with our housing department to find something that meets your needs, as Zach said, your budget, and you've got a little bit of everything. You've got something that would be a studio for very little money with very few amenities close to the campus, and all the way up to a four-bedroom home with every luxury imaginable and an ocean view, and the cost ranges as well. So you'll be able to find something that meets your needs and budget by working with our staff. Every once in a while, somebody decides they're not going to go through our housing database. And then if there's an issue with your landlord, we can't help you. All of the landlords in the UMHS database are vetted. They're people that we've worked with for a long time. They want to remain in that database. So as students come through, they can make sure that they continue to make money from renting their place out. So it's very important to the local landlords to remain in good standing in the good graces of the university. So it's a symbiotic relationship. Um, I didn't mean to cut you off, Zach, if you had any other.
Oh, no, I guess all I was going to add to this too is like you can see where the school is kind of in that blown up picture, right on the ocean, which is awesome. One of my best friends, Yulia Kongrova, she actually just matched for cardiac anesthesiology. She just is graduating as an anesthesiologist this year from I think a residency in Alabama, but incredibly bright girl, originally from Russia. That was one of the coolest parts about UMHS as well. Is just we meet all of these people from all over, um, and you just get such a good bite out of the culture that's in the world. But one thing that was cool is during her lunch break, she would go swim in the ocean before anatomy lab, and that's because the school is right on the ocean, which was great. Another thing that's pretty cool is this. I can never pronounce this mountain right, but Mount Lima Jui, I think, or I could be wrong.
Liamiga.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, One of our professors, Dr. Mungley, loves taking students up there. It's a pretty rigorous hike, but the view is incredibly gorgeous. I think I probably did it at least once a semester. And that was an awesome experience. And then Nevis is a little bit below this island, kind of below Basseterre. But every year there's a swim across the ocean that you can do. But it's pretty fun to swim across to Nevis. Just some activities you can do while you're there.
Excellent. Craig or Donna, do you have anything to add about living in St. Kitts? Your thoughts? It's okay if you don't.
So I think one of the more interesting things for me living in St. Kitts, so this is I'm just finishing my sixth year, just about to start my seventh year in St. Kitts, is um, watching how much of the island has evolved over that length of time. So St. Kitts, I mean, is a big tourist island. That's where a lot of the revenue for the island comes from. And so watching new amenities come in, watching new developments come in that way has been very interesting for me. So there's always this churn of new restaurants. There's always these new spots where you can go for coffee and hang out. Um, because everybody is from somewhere else. Telecommunication is decently reliable. Like internet is all over the campus. It's at the Royal. It's at the apartments. Um, and cell phones are like cell phone plans. If you want to get a local plan, are very cheap, particularly by Canadian standards. Painfully cheap by Canadian standards. Um, and so, having that access for data is fantastic there. So you're not stepping away from all of the amenities that you have at home. The grocery stores stock the same things that you want to look for. Maybe they don't have the exact brand you want, but they typically have the product that you want. So we just got a question in the chat. What's the population of the island on St. Kitts? So St. Kitts has got about 35,000, and then Nevis has got about another 15,000, give or take. So if you look at the entire federation, it's somewhere around 50,000, give or take. And they estimate there's about the same population of monkeys on the island, which is a fun little fact for trivia. It's, one of the places where monkeys were introduced by the original colonials. So you can get that too. Um, but one of the things that I think is really important, and I don't know that we do a good job of emphasizing this sometimes, actually, is Sean, you mentioned it exactly right. We're all from somewhere else. None of us are native Kittitian. None of our students are native Kittitian. Sometimes we get one or two who's Kittitian in school, but generally we're all from somewhere else. And that has a very strange effect that you don't realize until you're there. It's you create a new community because it's a natural thing that you want to do. People want to have their community. People want to be part of their village. And so when you leave somewhere, you think, oh, I'm going to be homesick, I'm going to be isolated, I'm going to be cut off, and all of these, I'm going to go through these horrible negative emotions. And yeah, you will miss home and you will talk to your families. But the strange thing is how quickly you develop a new community, and I really got the privilege of watching that happen. So, for the first time ever this year, we brought down a group of Canadians who are in their undergraduate. They're in a summer program that we piloted, and they were only there for a month. They had never met each other. They came from different schools across the country. And before the 4 weeks were over, they were wearing UMHS fleeces and UMHS jackets, and they were exchanging numbers, and they were making plans for when one of them was going to go to the other school or when they were going to come back down. So watching that community develop in this accelerated real-time view was something that I hadn't experienced before, but it's something that quite literally every medical student who comes down with us and more or less every faculty member goes through.
That was an outstanding segue. I was trying to think, how are we going to work in the summer program that we just
I'm here
completed?
for you.
I had no idea how we were going to do it. And you already had it where you were ready to go. That was that was excellent. Yeah, that's true. We did this summer program for the first time, so it was and it was an astounding success. So that's not for this. That's not for this for this presentation, but it is true. But it does bring up another point where every single one of those students that were in that summer program has told us that they will now be including us among the schools that they'll be applying to, which is probably the best compliment that we could have received, the best feedback that we could have received at the end of that 4 week program that they completed. So, and what it means for you and our audience tonight is that if you can do it, the experience of visiting the campus before you decide to apply, or you apply first, then visit the campus before you decide to enroll, is something that is it is just it is such a value added piece of the process. Most students, I will be honest with you, aren't able to do it, or they choose not to do it. But for any student who does choose to do it, we will certainly host you. We help you with the planning of it. We do a whole couple of days. You'll do a whole couple of days visit to St. Kitts, where you'll get a feel of what it's like to be a medical student. You'll get a feel of what it's like to live in St. Kitts. So it will help you really make the decision to come to UMHS. That's obviously the idea, but it'll help assuage any concerns that you have as well coming down. So, well, we've talked quite a bit about the basic sciences. I know Zach in his opening talked a little bit about what happens when you leave St. Kitts, because remember, and I know we sort of said this, but in case it sailed over anybody's head, the St. Kitts portion of the program is the basic sciences. It's really the equivalent of what you would know in North America as the first 2 years of medical school. So and for us, it comprises either 4 or 5 semesters, depending on the curricular track that you choose. There is the 4 semester, what we call standard basic science program. And then there is the 5 semester extended basic science program. And for all intents and purposes, to create the extended basic science program, we just remove one class, from each of the standard 4 semester program. That's an oversimplification of how it works, but so you're doing the basic sciences in either 16 months for the 4 semester program, or 20 months for the 5 semester program, 16 or 20 months. It's still less than 2 years. And essentially in the US or Canada, it will take you a full 2 years because of summer breaks to go through the first half of the medical program. At UMHS, we have a trimester program. We're in the midst of our spring semester right now, which runs from May to August. Then we will have the fall semester, which runs from September to December, and then we will have the winter semester, which runs from January into April. And there's a 2 to 3 week break in between each semester. Again, Zach mentioned this. You're basically there for 16 weeks, and if you want to fly home for a week for a break, you can do that. So you have that 2 to 3 week break in between each semester. So that's the way it's broken up. And then you leave St. Kitts, and the international portion of the program is complete. And it's kind of something that's difficult to wrap your head around, because as a prospective student, you get so wrapped up in the idea that I'm going to be an international medical student. I'm attending an international medical school. But then when you really think about the entirety of the program, it's only 16 or 20 months. It's less than 2 years. And before you know it, you're back in North America. And in the case of UMHS, you're moving on, as Zach detailed, you're moving on to Portland, Maine. It's what we colloquially call the 5th semester, which is the main integrated program, maybe the 6th semester if you've done the extended basic science track in the basic sciences. But you move on to Maine, and that is where you do the Intro to Clinical Medicine Part 2 course. And you're also doing the Biological Basis of Clinical Medicine course, which is essentially your preparation for USMLE Step 1. And wherever you go to medical school, the USMLE Step 1 is the first step of the licensing exam process in the US. And so you will be taking it. Even if your intention is to practice somewhere else in the world, in order to move through the UMHS program, you have to take step 1 and step 2 during the program. So at the conclusion of the main program, and probably more of a topic for another time to get fully into the details of what's going on in Maine, but suffice to say, there is a fully comprehensive overview, review, and preparation for USMLE Step 1. The partnership with Kaplan Medical that you see on the screen actually begins while you're still in St. Kitts, flows through into that full program, that full semester program up in Portland, Maine. And at the conclusion of that semester in Portland, you are ready to go and prepared to take step 1. And obviously, wherever you go to medical school, that's going to be the gateway to move into years 3 and 4, which are your clinical rotations. And just to kind of go through that, quickly, again, Zach talked about it. We had some of these slides up on the screen. We'll do so again. So we move through chronologically here. You're moving into year three. Your third year clinical rotations are your core rotations. And regardless of where you go to medical school, whether you're doing it in the Caribbean at UMHS, in the Caribbean at a different medical school, or somewhere in the US or Canada, you're doing the same core rotations in your third year. And for us, it's 48 weeks, obviously, out of 52 in a calendar year. 12 weeks of surgery, 12 weeks of internal medicine, 6 weeks of family medicine, six of pediatrics, six of OBGYN, and 6 weeks of psychiatry. And it may not all be in that order. It may be in a different order. It's depending on our hospital affiliates and when they have intake points throughout the course of the year, where you are entering in to the clinical process, at what point you take and pass step one. So where, the order that you'll do those core rotations is going to vary somewhat. And that's your third year. And you don't have to move around during your third year at all. So you'll be really at one hospital or within one geographic area, living in one spot, completing your core clinical rotations. And those rotations are going to be within our network of affiliate teaching hospitals. We have over 20 hospitals all around the US, Puerto Rico as well. We are affiliated with a US medical school in Ponce. Let's put that one up on the screen, Sham, show the hospitals. Just to go through, you can see they're in various geographic areas around North America as well. We have a sizable population of students from Puerto Rico who are interested in going back to Puerto Rico, and we can, allow them the opportunity to do that. We have students from all over the US and from Canada as well, and we have different opportunities or different locations for students to do their clerkships, those cores, in third year. As you move into fourth year, what you're doing after the cores are your elective rotations, and that's where you're really beginning to define your interests, your specialty. You're looking at, the types of specialties that you're going to be applying to for residency. Because again, regardless of where you go to medical school, whether it's in North America, whether it's at UMHS, your next stop before you are practicing under your own name is a residency, your postgraduate training. Anytime you see, and we had it up on the screen when we showed Zach earlier, PGY, postgraduate year, that's the number of years you're into your postgraduate training. After you graduate medical school, you are an MD. So you do 4 years of medical school, you are an MD, you move on to residency training for those that don't know, and then you are in your postgraduate training years, otherwise known as a residency program. And that's where you are defining your specialty. Like Zach is an interventional radiologist. Obviously, you have all sorts of different specialties that you can go into. Let's flip back. Let's save that for right now, Sean. Let's flip back to the hospital list for just a moment. Because I was talking about the third year, and you have to do your third year core rotations within our affiliate network, which these are all teaching hospitals. These are all, affiliated with a U.S. medical school, so they all have U.S. students rotating through them. Many have, students from other international medical schools rotating through them as well. You have to do your core rotations in third year at one of these hospitals. When you move into fourth year, you can do your fourth year elective rotations within our network. It makes it simple for scheduling because we're already affiliated with these institutions. But what's really exciting in fourth year, and I'm gonna bring this back to a question for Zach in just a moment. What's really exciting in your fourth year is that, again, that's where you are beginning to define your interests, your specialty. You're deciding what type of residency you're going to be applying to. But what you can also do at that point is try out different areas of the country. Zach was really fortunate because he's from Michigan. He was able to do his core rotations in Michigan. He was able to do electives in Michigan. I believe, I don't know that for sure, but I think that's the case. And now he's back in Michigan doing a residency as well. Maybe that's not you. Maybe some of you in the audience, that's not what you're thinking about. Maybe you have a whole different area of the country or that you want to go to. This is your opportunity to get away from where you're from, and you'd like to go live somewhere else. And what's really great about elective rotations in your fourth year is not only are you trying out different areas of specialty that you may apply to for residency, but you can also try out different hospital systems in different areas of the country. And so we've had students complete elective rotations in thousands of different hospitals that we're not affiliated with. And that's really the whole point I'm trying to make here. Zach, as you were getting ready to apply for your residency in interventional radiology, can you talk a little bit about how you structured your fourth year and maybe some of the choices that you made? And I'm making an assumption because I don't know this but I assume you went outside of our clinical affiliate network to do electives in your fourth year. I'm guessing that you did that.
Um, Let me think. So yeah, I went outside of network. My application was kind of unique. I was originally orthopedic surgery is like what I really wanted to do, and then sort of when you are applying in your fourth year of medical school, like Sean is saying, you do a bunch of electives, and your plan with the electives is you want to find certain places where you think you might want to do residency. Reason being is you get to go for an elective there for 4 weeks. What that 4 week elective is a 4 week long interview. If you go there and you crush it and you go there and you show how smart you are, you show how hardworking you are, you show how much of a team player you are, they want you as a resident. They've seen you work and they've seen you in action and actually in person doing things. They don't get to see all their applicants do that. And so that is a huge thing that separates you from the pack. If you can find certain spots you want to go and you're interested in residency, to go do that. So originally I wanted to do orthopedic surgery, and that's what I was thinking I wanted to do. I did my first elective rotation in orthopedic surgery and I absolutely hated it. This was in June, and then so my orthopedic surgery rotation was in June, and then you have July, August, and then apps are in September. So you only have like 3 other rotations in between that. So I had to do a ton of flip flopping. Reason being is I after orthopedic surgery, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, well, if that isn't it, and I couldn't experience orthopedic surgery um, because of you have your core rotations that you have to do. And then that was the first elective for my first sort of birth into orthopedic surgery. So I didn't like it. It was a lot of human carpentry and a lot of jigs and things like that. And it wasn't enough medicine for me personally. Anyways, I luckily had a radiology rotation was my next elective, and I absolutely fell in love with that. So that was in July, and I was able to do 2 weeks of interventional radiology within those 4 weeks of diagnostic radiology. What was great with that is I was able to experience interventional radiology, but I was also able to experience diagnostic radiology at a place that I would love to match for residency. This place was in Michigan. It was an affiliated hospital, but it was great because I got to, meet the program director. I got to work with the staff. I got to work with the residents. And, when you apply later in September for that residency program, if you do well, a lot of times, you're guaranteed an interview, which an interview guarantee is then you are always able to rank that spot to potentially match there. So luckily I was able to do that. I was able to get another 6 week rotation in interventional radiology at that spot. And I was able to bounce around to another few hospitals in Michigan. Reason being, I'm from Michigan. I wanted to stay in Michigan. Were they affiliated hospitals? No, I was able to get some that were not at affiliated hospitals. I did not get a elective rotation at the current hospital I am at, but through residency application and second looks and going and looking at the hospital and at the residency program, I really liked the program that I am in, and that's why I eventually ranked it high on my list and am fortunate that I matched here. But like Sean is saying, it's so important in that fourth year. If you do know what you want, or you're still looking to figure out what you want, that is okay, because it allows you to, you're setting up potentially the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of residency. If you pick like neurosurgery or something, you want to make sure that you like the place, or that you have an idea about the place that you are going to go to. And so if you can, get a lot of chips in your favor by, going and being in house for 6 weeks or 4 weeks, that's pretty much a 4 week long interview. And it can really, sort of set the ground for, okay, well, I don't even, necessarily want to go anywhere else. I really love this program that I'm currently at and where I'm rotating currently. And you can talk to the program director, you can kind of, figure out and get a feel for it if you think you'd be a good fit for that program. So like Sean was saying, these elective rotations really do I think make us as residents happy when we can find a spot that we've sort of already been, and a place that we've tried out for 4 weeks.
Excellent. Thanks, Zach. And one thing too that we haven't said, but I think is important is as we talk about it, we're talking about the student wanting to do this and is able to do that. They're not doing it on their own. They're doing it with the backing of the university. One of the parts of the administration is the clinical department, and you're working with a clinical advisor who is helping you navigate this whole process, and you're letting them know what your interests are, and they're helping you, really come up with the schedule. And that's really important because there not every international medical school is created equal, and there are quite a few international medical schools that after you get through the basic science portion of the program and you've passed the first part of the licensing exam, you are literally on your own in arranging your own clinical rotations and navigating the second half of the education on completely on your own. And that is not the case here. So sort of buyer beware as you look around at other international medical schools. So you're navigating this process with the guidance and the assistance of the clinical department. And you're also working with our Office of Residency Planning as well to help you prepare to go through that process. And there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. There are mock interviews. They're helping you, put together your statement, the whole package that's going to go forward from the university to these various residency programs. And we've been very, very successful in our nearly 20-year history. We have a 94% placement rate since the inception of the university, which is outstanding. And so, I mean, really, you could see the value, you could see the quality of the university by looking back at those residency match results. And I think our I think on our website we're going back about 10 years, almost 10 years. So you can look at residency results year after year. You could see the states, the hospitals themselves, and the specialties that our graduates are getting year after year. So after tonight, as you continue to do your research into the university, I would certainly encourage you to do that, look back and take a look at where our graduates are going into residency. And then from there, obviously, it's up to them if they're going to be going into, a fellowship and moving on. So there's quite a bit of information about our successful alumni on the UMHS website. So again, no matter, the medical school that you're going to, it's something you want to look into. What's the success that the university has in getting their students into residencies? So um, let's see. I mean, let's back it up probably 2 slides, Sean, because I think something that we haven't touched on at all that is really important.
Actually, if do you mind if I jump in there on that one for 1 second?
Oh, absolutely. Don't mind. No,
So
I don't. I don't absolutely mind. Absolutely don't mind.
I absolutely do. Um, we did get a question that I know Sham answered through text, but something that I want to point out for everybody who's listening, the list of affiliations that we have is not a static list. We're always trying to develop new spots for rotations. We're trying to always develop new affiliated hospitals and new opportunities for students. And I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that I'm not on the island right now. I'm actually back in Canada. And one of the things that I'm doing while I'm here is I'm speaking with 3 hospitals that are here looking for potential clinical sites to expand our opportunities that way. So this is something that is a continual, ongoing process for us.
No, it's good. I definitely did not see that one pop up. So well, stay with me here, Craig, because I want to talk a little bit about the reason why we're able to be so successful. Obviously, number one, it's through the hard work of our students, the want to of our students, students who are being told no from other medical schools where they've applied. Maybe we're giving them an opportunity where others have not. Maybe they're turning down other institutions to come here. But however it is that they've gotten here, they've gotten here, and they're putting everything into their experience. They're getting the support from the faculty. They're getting the support from the learning specialists, as you've heard from Dr. Walker. They're getting a great curricular structure taught by people who have taught elsewhere around North America, people who are, very, very strong in their individual fields. They're moving through a program that is purpose-built, and they're obviously, as you've seen, have been very successful coming out the back end, moving on into residency, and in the nearly 20 years that we've been here, having a 94% residency placement rate is fantastic. None of that matters without recognition um, from individual accrediting agencies. And it all starts with the accreditation agency for the country where the university is domiciled. That's again for any medical school. That's the first step in the process. And for us, that's St. Christopher and Nevis, the Ministry of Education. Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like Zach's gonna have to jump soon. Um, so and we've had that. You don't get that off the bat. You have to be operating for a few years under their auspices, and we did that and then earned their accreditation first in 2012, and it was we were reaccredited in 2018 and again in 2023. And then you also, in order to move into the United States and put your graduates into residency programs in the U.S., you need really to have the full breadth of opportunities that are available in North America, you need to have an accreditation from an independent accreditor that is recognized in North America. And for us, that's the Accreditation Commission on Colleges of Medicine, the ACCM, which is accrediting a number of institutions, certainly in the Caribbean and in other areas of the world as well. And 2015, 2021, and again in 2024, we were reaccredited by them as well. And what's really important there is that they follow the same standards as the Liaison Committee on Medical Education. And if you have not heard of the LCME, it is the body that accredits U.S. medical schools and formerly Canadian medical schools. Craig, I know you can kind of detail that for the audience. But that's what's most important, and that's why and you need to make you know Zach mentioned this and sort of his comments that there were concerns from his parents and if you're going to this school, what does it really mean? And that is a very common thing for people who are beginning to consider UMHS or any international medical school. So what third party is basically taking a look at the institution and saying, yes, this is a quality option. And for us, it is the combination of St. Christopher and Nevis, the St. Kitts and Nevis Accreditation Board, the Ministry of Education, and ACCM. So, Craig, from your perspective, you want to talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was actually very fortunate to be on our accreditation team in 2023 and 2024. So the reality is the accreditation of your school is its lifeblood. That's what decides if the doors are going to be open. That's what decides if the students are going to be able to practice. So your diploma is only as good realistically as the accreditation of your school. And so when you look at your options for medical school, this is one of those essential things you need to find out. And so these are searchable criteria. This is something that no school can just claim that they have. So some of the most important things to get accreditation, essentially, you have to submit yourself to an audit. And we went through our audits in 2023 and 2024. So the first one, 2023, was through St. Christopher and Nevis Ministry of Education. So what that means is that's our approval by St. Kitts to be able to operate a medical school. And so they brought in three accreditors. We prepared over 300 pages of documentation for them. They spent the better part of a week on campus. They inspected everything. They interviewed with students, they interviewed with faculty members, they interviewed our administration. And so the entire process is exhaustive. There is absolutely nothing that you can hide from that. And then we went through the exact same set of auditing again in 2024 through the Accreditation Commission on Colleges of Medicine, ACCM, which is the international accreditor. They're based out of Ireland and they accredit medical schools around the world. And you have to do the exact same thing. Hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation, all of your courses, all of your faculty members, to the point where everybody is submitting their resumes again to get reviewed, where people are being called in for interviews. So it is an exhausting process, and you have to go through it every 5 or 6 years depending on the body. So in St. Kitts it's 5 years, for ACCM it's six. So it even means you cannot just rest on your standards. You have to keep pushing for that level of excellence. And so UMHS is incredibly proud that in both of our reviews, not only did we earn the full length that you can be accredited, which is 5 years for St. Kitts and 6 years for the ACCM, we did so without having any citations that we had to correct in our program. So that is functionally saying there are no deficiencies that could be found by either body after reviewing absolutely everything that we can present to them on the university. That is an exemplary standard, and we are phenomenally proud on that. And so, one thing that I frequently get asked is, well, why are you accredited by this ACCM body that's out of Ireland? Why don't you just get accredited by the United States? Why don't you get accredited by where we want to go practice? And it's because you actually can't. It doesn't work that way. So, the United States or Canada, they're not allowed to accredit a school that's outside of their borders. And so, if you want to go and practice in that jurisdiction, what you have to do is you have to submit your school for their inspection. And the way that you do that is you need somebody to do that audit for you. And that's what ACCM does. So they perform that function where we can provide all that information to them. And then ACCM is able to say to the body in the United States, which is the LCME, hey, these guys, they meet your criteria. They do everything that they're supposed to do. They're at the standard of a domestic medical school. And then that gives you the stamp of approval that says, yes, your graduates are equally recognized as our graduates. And as Sean said, once upon a time, the LCME also used to be able to provide some accreditation into Canada. There's been kind of a divergence on those standards over the last 2 years or so. So the LCME is kind of pulling back to just being the United States. It's not going to affect anybody who's graduating from the school if they want to practice in Canada or practice in the US. It basically it's behind the scenes of how you go through that approval process for both of the countries. The excellent thing is, though, that because of the standard that we maintain and because of the way that we've chosen to have ourselves accredited, is that any graduate who walks out with a UMHS MD is eligible to take the Step 1 exam or is eligible to take the MCCQE exam for Canada. And when you get your license at the end of the program, you're eligible to practice anywhere in the United States. You're eligible to practice anywhere in Canada. Your license is transferable anywhere you want to go in either jurisdiction.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that breakdown, Craig. All right, let's see. Well, we've touched on really most of the main points. So if you like what you're hearing, and again, if you were hoping to start medical school this fall, but you haven't been given an opportunity to do so yet, orientation for our September class starts 6 weeks from tomorrow. It's hard to believe, but we're right here enjoying our summer. But 6 weeks from tomorrow, the fall class will begin its orientation. So, and again, we are still accepting applications. We make it easy to apply online at umhs.org. We're also accepting applications for the terms in 2027 as well. So just to go through the admissions process briefly, again, this is something that happens on a rolling basis. So when you think about the U.S. and Canadian process, where you start in the late spring and you start filling out the application, and 14 months later, you actually start medical school after you go through the secondary application process, and then in the fall is interview season, and then maybe in the winter, maybe you're still interviewing or you're starting to get decisions if you went early decision in any school, and then later on into the spring. You're going to get decisions from the other schools to which you've applied, and maybe you're on a wait list, and then that may stretch into the following summer, and then before you know it, a whole year has gone by, and it's a full 14 months between when you first fill out an AMCAS to when you actually sit in med school in September. So at UMHS, everything happens on a rolling basis. The sooner you apply, the sooner you get your documents to us, the sooner you will find out if you're eligible for an interview, and the sooner you will find out if you are accepted. Somehow Siri thinks I'm talking to her. How'd that happen? So the online application available at umhs.org, and we have two options. If you've applied previously through AMCAS or ACOMAS or the Texas Medical Dental or through OMSAS up in Ontario, you can submit a PDF copy of that prior submission to us, and we're asking all the same questions on our application, so it makes the process a little bit simpler. And if you have a PDF of the AMCAS, the ACOMAS, or so on, and you submit that, that will serve as your UMHS application. You will not have to then go through and fill out everything on the UMHS application. So makes it a little bit simpler. Once your application arrives, we're going to be asking for really a standard slate of information from you. We need transcripts from all of the colleges or universities that you've attended, both undergraduate or if you have graduate or post-bac work, we're going to need those transcripts as well. We're going to be looking for a couple of things. We're going to be looking to make sure that you've completed at least a minimum of 90 undergraduate credits, or essentially, if you went to a school that's on a one credit system instead of a 3 or 4 credit system, we're looking for at least 3 undergraduate years completed. And we do that so you can apply as you move into your senior year. If you'd like to do that, and you'd like to apply here along with the other schools that you will be applying to, that's fine. So a bachelor's degree is recommended. It's not explicitly required. And most of the students who are coming to UMHS, the vast majority have their bachelor's degree, if not also a master's degree. Among those 90 credits, among those the equivalent of 3 years, we're looking for a standard slate of prerequisite coursework having been completed. And that's a year of introductory biology, a year of introductory chemistry, a year of organic chemistry, a physics, English, math, which is going to be calc or stats. Any of those science courses are going to require a lab component with them. So, obviously this is the standard sort of pre-med track that you would find at any university. If you haven't gone through the pre-med track, or if you're a career changer who's coming over to medicine, a little bit later than their undergraduate years, that's fine. If you're piecing together, those courses, if you're taking them as a non-degree student, to get all the prerequisites done, you may just want to touch base with us to make sure that the courses that you're taking will fulfill our requirements. We do that all the time. We speak with prospective students to help guide them through as they're planning their coursework out. Again, especially if this wasn't their, if they're not a full-time undergraduate student at the moment, if they're a non-traditional student, that happens all the time. We do require the MCAT if you are a citizen or resident of the United States. It is not explicitly required if you are a citizen or resident of Canada or elsewhere in the world. The caveat there is if you've done your undergraduate education inside the United States, we do require the MCAT. The reason for that is simply the MCAT isn't offered everywhere in the world. So we want to be fair to folks. But if you are completing your undergraduate program inside the US, we require the MCAT. And if you are a citizen or resident of the US, it's also required. And that's an important part of the review process. It's not the only thing that our faculty admissions committee is looking at. We don't set a specific minimum requirement on the MCAT, but it is something that helps the faculty on the admissions committee determine your admissibility. We're going to be looking for a CV or resume from you as well. We want to know a little bit about your background. What have you done through the years to prepare for this outside of just the academic side of it? What have you been doing? Have you had any experience? Have you dipped your toe in the water in terms of volunteering or shadowing or scribing or working as an EMT? Or what is it that you've done to expose yourself to the medical field? Because it's really important. This is going to be 4 years of some of the hardest work that you've ever done in your life. And if you just think you want to be a physician, that's going to be a bit of a challenge if you've never experienced anything related to the medical field. So we want to see what you've done up to this point. Obviously, any of your leadership activities, any of those things as well, any other extracurricular activities are going to be very important. We're going to require a couple of letters of recommendation from you or a singular committee letter. If you go to a school that compiles a committee letter for medical school applications, That committee letter will then take into account opinions from multiple people, and that will be all that's required. However, not every school does that, or not every student is going, working through the office that prepares those, and we recognize that. So, in lieu of that, we'll require two letters of recommendation from people who have taught you in the classroom. An essay is required, and that's fairly straightforward. We're looking to learn a little bit more about you, probably something that you'll be able to tell us that's not to be found elsewhere in your application, so we can learn a little bit about the challenge that you've overcome and get to learn a little bit more about you as a person. Once everything is complete, we will make a determination of whether or not you are eligible for an interview. And we think the interview part is really important. If you're familiar at all with any of the statistics at medical schools in the US or Canada, a very, very small percentage of applicants are actually being interviewed. And in my home state in New Jersey, I happen to know the statistics pretty well, and the medical schools in New Jersey are interviewing 7, 8, 9% of the applicants who are applying to their institution. That's it. All of the time and energy and effort you put into making this really strong application package, and putting, dotting every, I and crossing every T and making sure everything is as perfect as it can be. And then, it doesn't necessarily even get you in the door for an interview. And we think it's critically important to meet the people who are applying to be part of our program, because really the only way to really find out whether or not a student is going to be compatible with what you're offering is to get to know them. And luckily, we are at a point where we are still able to interview 8 out of every 10 applicants who are applying. So it's very important to us to interview as many applicants as possible to get to know them and make a determination of how we may be able to help them achieve their goals in medicine. Once the interview is done, and we have admission staff who are located around North America, we have a number of alumni who are helping us out with interviews as well. The interview is done via Zoom. Face-to-face interviews in person are extremely rare these days, just as they are for medical schools around North America. Same, most of the interviews are happening via video chat. If you'd like to have an in-person interview, we can always arrange that. But otherwise, they're going to be face-to-face via video chat. Once the interview is complete, there's a summary of your background that's created by the interviewer, summary of the conversation that goes together with an evaluation of your academic history that's already been completed by our staff as well. And that's going forward with with everything that you've submitted, that's going forward to the members of our admissions committee. Now, even though my title is Vice President for Admissions, I do not make any admissions decisions, and that's really important for you to understand. Our faculty, folks who are teaching in the program, are making the determination of who is going to have the opportunity to study in the program. And so you have people from all different academic disciplines, you have people from different backgrounds, you have people with different experience levels. So it's really interesting to see the committee, when they review a file, and their individual, sort of their individual thoughts on each candidate. I do get to see those, and we in admissions get to see faculty's notes about why a decision, may be made, and then we get to transmit that to you. And those decisions, there's a few different ones that you may receive. So obviously, the one that you want is admit, and the one that you don't want is deny. And those are two, obviously the two main decisions that you'll be receiving. Sean, if you want to skip to the next slide, we'll put that up just quickly. So we actually have a few different decisions. One of them may be placement in the accelerated review program. I'm going to swing back around just about the ARP as well. But acceptance and placement in either the standard basic science program or acceptance in the extended basic science program would be something that's coming back from the admissions committee, and we will transmit and let you know that decision. Some students are denied outright for whatever reason. We'll be able to let you know what the admissions committee felt, why they felt they weren't able to offer you an opportunity in the program. And then there's something that's sort of in between, and that's the Accelerated Review Program, or ARP. And I think Dr. Walker is still with us, and I'm going to just sort of tee this up here for a moment, and I'm going to bring Dr. Walker in to help talk a little bit about ARP as well. So essentially, if you look at it from the standpoint of if you're applying to a medical school in the US or a medical school in Canada and you are denied admission, usually the recommendation, if you can get one from the medical school, is to go back and do some more work to help better prepare yourself for success and then to come back and apply to medical school again. And usually the way to get that is through a dedicated either post-baccalaureate program or a master's program or a biomedical sciences program that is specifically designed to give you information out of the first couple of years of medical school. And again, give you something additional, give the committee something additional that's academic that they can look at and reconsider you. The problem with that is those programs tend to be a year long, maybe 2 years if it's a full master's program. And then you go back and you reapply to that same school again, and then all too often the decision remains the same, and you're denied again, and because you had no leg up, you had no there was no preferential treatment given to you as an applicant, even though you went and you did what they said. Now, the accelerated review program is somewhere sort of in between there. It's a 1 semester program where we do give you a look into the material out of the first few semesters of medical school, with a focus on study skills and test taking techniques. And all you have to do is pass the ARP, and you are guaranteed a seat in the first semester at UMHS the next semester. So that's a really basic overview, Dr. Walker. So maybe you can, give a little bit more of a look into what's actually going on in that 15-week, 1 semester ARP for students who are, and again, these are students who have a lot of potential, who we want to come to UMHS. But when the admissions committee and the faculty members take a look at their file, they feel that we would be doing them a disservice by putting them right into first semester because they may need a little bit of strengthening of their academic foundation before they get into first semester. So Donna, from your perspective, we can talk a little bit about ARP.
So I think ARP is a really cool program for a number of reasons. Most of our students completely, I would say all of the students usually enjoy their experience. And it's because there's a dedicated ARP classroom. So they're in the same space. They get to kind of build community. They're all going through the same classes. Really importantly, it covers off basically an introduction to every single course that you have in basic sciences. So you go into basic sciences basically aware of the foundation of everything you need to know for every single one of your classes, which means it's a little bit fast paced and you're doing about 2 or 3 topics at a time and then you're switching. But what people really appreciate about that when they get into EBS or med is that they're really comfortable. When they start off doing anatomy, they're not struggling to figure out how they approach this concept. When they get to the third semester and they're doing micro, they're comfortable in how they usually learn micro. So if there are some of these classes that you haven't seen before, one, you get exposure to almost the first block of the content, so you feel really comfortable starting every single semester. Our ARP students, when they get into EBS and men, tend to do really well just because they know what to expect. The other piece with knowing what to expect for a lot of students includes having a semester to kind of figure out St. Kitts, figure out UMHS, figure out the faculty, kind of settle in. A lot of people really appreciate that. You don't need an entire semester to do that, but when you have a semester to do it, it really helps you feel comfortable when med starts or EBS starts and the pace is really fast and you have your exams, you're already really settled into your routine, right? You have your preferred gym, you have your spot that you already settled in on where you live, you know where you like to get your particular set of groceries. All of those things that you kind of figure out, people figure out in ARP. They also go into med with a group of friends, a community, and really importantly, which we have in our study skills and communications class, they go in knowing themselves as learners really well. So they're not going into a class and let's say they start EBS 1 or Med 1 and hearing students saying, oh, this is how you study for cell biology. They don't have to find themselves spending 10 weeks of the term trying 10 different approaches because they can just think back to, when I had cell biology last term for, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, this is what I did and this is what helped. This didn't really help. So I'm going to lean into what worked. So I really think those students are positioned to make the most of the Med and EBS program just from having that extra semester to be in that safe space and to even be in a situation where, let's say you took micro in ARP and you hated it and it didn't make sense. Well, now when you're going into med, you kind of know, okay, I need to brush up on my micro. I need to figure out what works for me. I need to know what strategies I need to use. So on both sides, you get a really strong sense of how do I approach this content? what's expected of me in medical school, because it really does show you what's expected, what's the content, what's the pace, what are the faculty expecting, and you get to know the faculty a little bit. So you feel a lot more comfortable when you're going in to say, okay, I know this teacher, this is what I know about them, this is what they bring to the table, these are my questions. And so I think it brings a level of familiarity with everybody that's really helpful for most of our students. But of course, because I'm involved in the learning side and the learning strategies and the study skills class, I will say having a safe space where you can explore your strengths. You can see if your concentration, your attention, you're selecting the main idea, your test taking, your self-taking, all these skills, about 10 of these skills that we explore in the class, where you stand with them, and then to have dedicated time to close off on the gaps. So if for whatever reason you find yourself really struggling to just process information, a lot's happening and you can't figure it out, you have a semester to figure that out, right? So you're not in med school rushing with the volume and trying to figure out who you are as a learner. You already have time to develop this really strong identity as a learner, and then you walk into any class feeling like, I can do this. So I think there's a lot of perks to ARP, but really the dedicated time and space to get exposure to every single class in EBS and med is incredible. And the time to just figure out how you respond to that volume, to that pace, to that content, so you have a game plan. And so I will say most of our ARP students, when they get into EBS and Med, they hit the ground running. They're very confident in their approaches. They come back if they need help because they know where to find it. But really and truly, most of them have a very seamless experience just because they go in with some knowledge on what they should do and if things are not going to plan, who they should contact.
That's a great overview. Thank you so much, Donna. And again, the students who are in the ARP this semester that started in May and ends in August, those students who pass, they will be in semester one starting at the beginning of September. All you do is pass and you are ready to go into the full MD program. So we've talked about so many wonderful things. The one thing we have not talked about, and we saved to last, I guess strategically probably is, so what does it cost? And so the good news is that when you compare our tuition and fees at UMHS to various types of competition, as you can see, how we compare to the average US MD program, an in-state institution, public school, an out-of-state public option, in-state private options, out-of-state private options. You can see on the screen there how we compare very, very favorably. Most importantly, though, is how we compare to other schools in our own category, which would be, Caribbean medical schools. If you're looking at some of the larger Caribbean medical schools, maybe those that have been around a little bit longer than we have, remember, we're not even at 20 years old just yet. Those schools, and these come straight from their websites, tuition costs, this is just tuition only. Those schools are costing you over $360,000 for the full 4-year MD program. And at UMHS, we're just over 200,000. So that is, you're getting quite a lot for your money in terms of all of the things that you've heard about during the course of the presentation this evening. When you factor in living costs and things like that, it will creep over $300,000 for a full cost of attendance at UMHS, but you're still not even at the full cost of attendance at competitor Caribbean medical schools with living costs that are going to run you up into the $500,000 range. So, and really that comes back to a very, very simple reason. We are the last privately family-owned medical school in the Caribbean. All of the other schools that are in the Caribbean have been bought up by either investment groups or larger educational conglomerates. And those corporations have shareholders, and their first duty is to shareholders. At UMHS, our first and only duty is to students. So we can keep the costs down, we can keep them reasonable. We still have to pay staff. We still have to, obviously operate the program. But that's why you see the cost to attend here is much more reasonable compared to much of our competition. Now, unless you have a rich uncle, most people don't have $200,000 in their back pocket to be able to just pay for the program outright. So for those who don't, there are scholarships and loans that are available. Scholarships are based on undergraduate GPA, MCAT, and other criteria. And the loans for U.S. citizens and permanent residents come through Sallie Mae, which is one of the largest lenders in North America. It's available for ARP, EBS, and the MED programs. Our friends in Canada, for those students, will be able to take out lines of credit from the five major Canadian banks. One of the things that you will do as soon as you're accepted, really the first contact that you're going to have outside of admissions after acceptance is the financial aid office at UMHS, and the financial aid office is well equipped to help you navigate that process for applying for aid, let you know sort of where you stand in terms of, it's a private loan, so it can be credit based. Co-signer can help you, so help you navigate that whole process. And again, that's really the first stop after admissions as you work through the enrollment paperwork as you're deciding to attend UMHS. So as we begin to wrap up, I just want to kind of remind you really of all of the different things that we touched on this evening and talk about the value and some of the many things that we talked about. The biggest thing to drive home, I think, is the first bullet that we see here. 94% overall residency placement rate since the inception of the university. Your goal, or really any school is worth, where its alumni are going. And, when they leave us, they're leaving us with the MD and moving directly into residency. And so we know that we're preparing them well. They're telling us that we're preparing them well. And the proof is in the pudding in terms of residency placement results, which again are on our website. You can go back and look to the last number of years at residency placements, specialties our graduates are getting into. Many of them are choosing to go into primary care areas. Many of them are going into internal medicine with an eye toward a fellowship in a specialty area that you cannot go directly into. So 94% residency placement rate since the inception is outstanding. All of it due to the high academic standards that we have structured into our program, the personalized education, smaller by design, the learning support that you heard about through Dr. Walker and her team, leading to 96% student retention, only a 4% attrition rate. And again, I challenge you to find another school that will put their attrition rate in writing. And again, the smaller size, 7 to 1 student to faculty ratio, help from the dedicated learning specialists, all taught on a state-of-the-art campus in St. Kitts. That you only spend 16 or 20 months down there, though, and then you're back in North America and you're navigating our 26 hospital affiliates around the US and Canada. Helpful affiliations from Kaplan Medical and UWorld to help prepare for licensing exams, helping give you all the knowledge that you need to navigate and pass those exams. We're 94% pass rate on step 2 in 2024, 100% pass rate on the MCC QE Part 1 up in Canada, all at a price that is pretty surprising given everything you're getting for your money, and then to pay for it, comprehensive financial aid options. So, and really what you're working toward, we just got to experience once again a little over a month ago, and that's graduation. So for all of you who are there in our audience, you're looking ahead, you want to be like Dr. Vanderveer, you want to get to know Dr. Walker, you want to get to know Dr. Ayer, you want to move through the program, you want to be where you are. Avery Fisher Hall in New York City, which is at Lincoln Center. So for those of you who are familiar with New York City, as a culmination of this momentous achievement, everything you've been working toward for so many years, you will get to walk across the stage at Avery Fisher Hall in Lincoln Center and hear your name called with the word doctor in front of it for the very first time. So that is what you're working toward. That is what we are here to help you achieve. And if this is something that you would like to do, we are obviously here to help. So hopefully you've learned a few things about our process this evening. So I know we lost Dr. Vanderveer because he had to get ready to get back to his shift for this evening. So as we wrap up, Dr. Walker, thank you so much for being part of the conversation this evening and for sharing information about how your department is supporting students. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for the members of our audience?
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's always great to be here and talking to potential students. My one piece of advice, or if I have any words of wisdom, would be as you think about your journey and you think about starting medical school, I think you should prioritize not only the curriculum, because we know the curriculum is standardized across the world, no matter what school you go to, you should be getting a very similar curriculum, but really the kind of supports that are available to help you succeed. And I think you've heard from us a little bit about the supports that are available, and rest assured there's many, many more. And I think in addition to the faculty support that we offer, there's a real culture and community of collaboration and support among the students that you don't often see in these highly competitive environments. And I think UMHS does a great job at not making it a highly competitive environment, but making it a very collaborative, supportive environment, not just from the faculty, but even in the student culture. So that would be my one reason to pick UMHS, or my piece of advice if you had to make a decision.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Donna, for your time this evening and for your input on behalf of our audience. And then there's Dr. Ayer. So Dr. Ayer, I mean, obviously so many, students in the audience are going to have, other options, and we run across students all the time who obviously they're not just applying here, they're applying elsewhere. They may have multiple offers that they're fielding, and they're trying to make an informed decision on where they're going to, who really on who they're going to entrust with this next phase of their education. Um, what would you say to someone who asked you, why should I attend UMHS when I've been, offered an opportunity at XYZ University?
Yeah, that is an absolutely great question, and I think for me that's the ultimate question. I've got a daughter, and if she was to ask me at some point, I want to go to medicine, I want to apply to a couple of schools, and I want to see what I can do. The first thing that I would ask, the first thing that I would look for is who's actually going to support you? Who's actually going to make this journey something that you will be successful at? And that is not really about the curriculum. It's not about the design of the program. It's not about the hospital where you're going to rotate. It's about the support. It's about the community that you're going to be into, and it's about the level of investment that the school has in your success. And so let's call a spade a spade. Let's put it out there. UMHS lives and dies by the success of our students. And that's the full end of the story. So, for our school to be successful, for us to keep our doors open, for us to keep having that mission that we feel is so important to us, our students have to be successful. There's no other way for us to live, no other way for us to survive as an institution. So, student success is the goal, it's the primary driving factor of the school. And so that means the entirety of the school is built around ensuring that level of student success for them, for us, for everybody who's affiliated here. And so that means, in my opinion, the reason that you choose UMHS is not because it's going to innovate the curriculum, it's not because it's going to, find some wonder of the human body no other school has discovered. It's not about that. It's about saying the first day that you walk in through the door, we sincerely believe that in a few years we're going to watch you walk across the stage, and then we're going to watch you walk into your practice, and then we're going to want to watch you walk into your fellowship and into the rest of your career. If we have that sincere belief, it means we're going to do everything in our power to make that a reality. And so you want to surround yourself with people who have that sincere belief about you. And if you don't have that feeling and somebody's not telling you how that's going to be the case, then that's not the place for you. And that's the end of the story for me.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Craig. Thanks so much for your time and your thoughts as well this evening. So thanks to all our audience as well. Thanks to everyone for your questions. I was looking at them as they were coming in fast and furious. Thanks to Sham Daria, the Director of Enrollment Management, who is handling most all of them individually. I know we fielded a few of them to our panel. Many of them were very individual as well, so I'm glad we were able to get them all individually answered. And for those of you in our audience, thank you certainly for your time and for being here with us. I encourage you, if you're not already doing so, to follow us on your favorite social media platform. As you can see, there's a number of them to choose from. They're on the screen. And in particular on YouTube, we'll have this webinar posted by about this time tomorrow evening. And so you'll be able to go back and review any of the information that you missed if you'd like to rewatch it. So any questions that you may have beyond this evening, you can contact us directly at admissions@umhs-sk.net. You can visit us on the web at umhs.org. We look forward to seeing you in the future. We look forward to receiving your application for admission and working through the admissions process with you and getting to know you and getting to understand what it is that you'd like to contribute to the world of medicine and how we may be able to help you do that. So, again, on behalf of my colleagues, my name is Sean Powers. I'm Vice President for Admissions at UMHS. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Have a great night.